Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tipsy Ghosts. We're your tipsy hosts, Sarah, and Lindsey.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hello. So we are in the final episode of talking about our friendiversary trip down to New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yes, we are.
It wouldn't be us without doing some sort of makeshift investigation.
We tried.
We did try. So New Orleans, part of the reason we picked it is because it's a spooky town. We knew we were going to go somewhere in October and we were like, where can we go? We did Salem, New Orleans. But it was surprisingly hard to find like a place to investigate.
Truly.
In New Orleans.
Right.
We looked for what felt like months and
Yes.
reached out to pretty much anybody that we could think of. And like Lindsey said, it was just really, really hard to find anywhere that you could do an actual paranormal investigation.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't find anything that did like a private, which is ideal. I think that's what we always want.
Right.
But even like, public, a lot of the places that are haunted are privately owned nowadays.
Right.
We're like, hey, you can walk by it. That's it. We're like, cool. So, Sarah, I think you found us this location.
I did. Now, New Orleans is obviously in the South and has a lot of roots in slavery.
So there's a lot of locations around there that have history tied to that. But plantations, I mean, it's a thing that has a lot of history to it. And there's a tactful way, I think, that a lot of these like historical societies are kind of showing the history behind it, but also being like mindful of there was bad things that happened and the way we treated people were not okay.
Yeah. Before we talk about our trip down to where we did a makeshift investigation, do you guys want to talk about the food a little bit? Our experiences?
Yes.
I've got a new arch nemesis.
I was very excited for the food. One of the things that I love eating when I'm in the South is gator. I love gator.
Yeah.
I was very pleased with all the gator that I ate.
I've had it before. I liked it.
Yes, Boyce and I shared some fried gator at one place. Sarah tried it.
I chomped through one bite. It was an immediate no.
She didn't like it. I also had a gator hot dog. It was like a gator sausage.
I forgot about the gator hot dog.
It was delicious. I loved it so much.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What else? You guys tried crawfish.
We did try crawfish.
Crawfish mac and cheese.
I enjoyed it.
I primarily ate the crawfish off of you guys' plate.
I ate the macaroni.
Sarah made a giant pile of crawfish for you. I decided to enjoy both the crawfish and the mac and cheese.
We all know before we even went down there that I need a food therapist, okay? I have issues. But I was still open-minded to trying new things. I never said I was going to like anything, but to be fair, I don't like a lot of things here at my home. So.
You did try, or not try, but a Southern food that you enjoyed was grits.
Oh,
we
I
ate a
love
lot of grits.
Yeah.
Yes, she ate a lot of grits
all the
with me.
time.
I had never had grits before, especially not shrimp and grits, and that was absolutely delightful. I wish I could make that for myself and have it be that delicious.
I've made shrimp and grits before at home, and it's delicious.
It is delicious. I think, actually...
I'll make it for you sometime.
I had shrimp and grits one time for dinner, and that's how I was introduced to grits many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they are good.
Yes.
I love them. Do you like them better with like butter, or like do you like them sweet?
So nowadays, I like the cheese grits. I do like that.
me
But
too.
growing up, so for breakfast every morning, instead of instant oatmeal in the South, we have instant grits.
I eat those a lot.
Yes.
So,
And so my dad would make me the instant grits, and he would put butter in it once it was done and melt
that's
it in.
how I eat it. Mhm.
Yes. So I like both.
I like that. My husband likes to put like brown sugar.
Oh, no,
in
I
it.
don't do that. I'm savory.
Yeah.
Cheese or butter. That's it.
Cheese and butter and with milk instead of water is my preference.
Yes.
We tried beignets.
Oh, yeah. Did we ever?
Beignets are so good.
Sarah and I wore part of our beignets, thanks to Lindsey.
Listen, we
The
were
dragon.
drunk when we first tried beignets.
This was after our walking pub tour.
It was our first night in New Orleans. We were drunk. We decided to get some beignets at like 1 a.m. to help sober us up before we walked home. And I snorted powdered sugar all over the
Yes,
two of you.
You
She
did.
decided to exhale as she was taking a bite of
And
a
it
powdered
blew.
sugar covered beignet.
It was delicious.
Straight out of a cartoon.
It was delicious.
hilarious.
It is a very blurred memory for me, but it was delicious. I remember.
I am just so glad we caught that on camera. You see, this is why we decided we need to vlog more often, because we laughed the next day until we cried at least 3 times over this video.
I saw that video
So
like
funny.
5 times.
Yes. That was at Café du Monde. And I don't know if they have anything besides just regular plain beignets, but those were good enough. I loved those.
Those were very good.
Delightful.
Mm-hmm.
What is your nemesis?
Here's what's not so great in New Orleans. And this is going to be a hot take, especially if you're from New Orleans.
We tried it.
We tried a muffaletta.
We were not fans.
Can you explain what a muffaletta is?
Okay, it's a sandwich. It's like on a round bread, and it has an olive tamponade with a couple different meats and cheeses, and it's typically served cold, which ours was. And we decided, we'll just try the half, right? Because we thought maybe that was plenty. It wasn't for us, I don't think.
We tried it, and as we're trying it, we all pretty much agreed we don't like olives normally.
Yeah, so that's on us.
I love
That's on us.
Here's the thing. I love black olives.
So
This was purely green olives.
Yeah.
And the bread was flavored green olive.
and maybe olive oil too.
I'm okay with the light olive oil, but this was olive.
It was olive bread.
That's on me. I hate olives of any kind, black or green.
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, let me try it.
It's the same. I actually don't like olives. So that was
Why did you guys get it?
because we were in New Orleans.
It was a New Orleans staple, and we thought, why not?
I felt like we had to.
Boy. Well, we've had it, and now we know.
No, now we know. We did have a shrimp po' boy. That was
that was pretty
delightful.
good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, we ate lots of good food. I tried to eat as much seafood as possible.
We ate food.
Lindsay, I think, was the happiest with the food.
I am very easy to please with food. Like, I like most things.
But you also like gator and
Yes.
crawfish and
Seafood
things.
is one of my favorite things to eat when I am close to the ocean. Like, anytime we go to the coast, I'm eating seafood nonstop because I love it. Because I don't get it here in the Midwest very much. So I was happy with my shrimp and my crawfish and my gator.
Mm-mm.
That was good.
Here's how gator tastes. You know when chicken is like really thick? That's what it tasted
It's
like.
tough.
But tougher. That's a no for me.
Yes.
I guess that doesn't describe the taste at all.
You can work it out in food therapy.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll be going soon.
I like most foods. Boydston, I feel like you liked a lot of the stuff except for the muffaletta.
Yeah. I was okay with most things. Like, just, okay, that's fine. But I was most amazed by the crawfish mac and cheese and the shrimp and grits. I don't know if I was hungover. I don't know if I was just starving, but those two dishes we had at the same time, they were incredible.
When we went to breakfast, one place too, that was really good. And you got a side of grits. And even that side of grits was really good.
Yes, that was delicious. Okay. One thing we did not try was gumbo.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to try that again sometime.
Yes, we did not try the gumbo. I had a crab cake too. More seafood. I had a crab cake and that was really good too.
See, look at us. So, as Lindsay mentioned, we had to search high and low to find somewhere to go do an investigation. And we found somewhere, and it's called the Destrehan Plantation. It is just outside of New Orleans, but we did have to take a little bus trip out there. You guys
did.
remember that?
I do remember it because at the place we were meeting to get on the bus, there was like a bar where you could get massive drinks.
How big are those cups?
I said, I have to go to the bathroom. Why don't we each get a drink? And they were going to order us drinks. And I come out, and the 3 drinks that they had ordered, each one was like a giant 32 ounce
Easily.
of alcohol.
They were each different flavors. We couldn't decide.
Yes, there was 3 flavors, so we each got one. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Thinking it's going to be like a normal size drink.
It was not.
Twas not.
And then we just split them all. And it worked out great.
And we did. And so they put a lid on them. That's the nice thing about New Orleans. You can walk around with open containers of alcohol in the streets. So we took it with us on the tour, and it was great. It was delightful.
It really worked out great.
Yeah, they were good.
Okay, so you ready to learn a little bit about the Destrehan Plantation?
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. Like I mentioned, it is located just outside of New Orleans in Louisiana in a little town called St. Charles Parish. The history of the house starts with 2 different families and involves several other key people, and we'll mention them when we talk about the construction and management of the home. The first family we're going to talk about is the namesake of the plantation, the Destrehan family. The story starts with a man named Jean Baptiste.
Oh my God.
This is such a common name.
He has several other names.
It's like the John Smith.
And I'm just going to warn everybody, I will mispronounce names. Apologies.
French names are hard to say.
Jean-Baptiste Honore Destrehan.
I don't need to give a disclaimer. I will mispronounce these. Y'all know me by now.
So JB, he arrived in Louisiana in 1730 and worked as a clerk. He married Catherine de Govey, Sure.
I'm believing everything you say.
And they had 7 children, but maybe the most important child.
What?
The favorite child.
The favorite child.
The favorite.
For this story, anyways, his name is Jean-Noel Destrehan, and he was born in 1759. So the next family started with a man named Robert Antoine Robin Delaunay.
Deloney, like bologna.
I was saying in my brain Delogny, so that sounds a lot better.
Okay, so I say Delaunay because it's Dlogny. But then now that I'm thinking about it, I think that the lady that I listened to said Delongay.
Oh, that sounds more French.
So not Delogny.
But it's spelled like Logny. Okay. Delongay sounds way better. Anyways, he was born in France.
Listen, I'm talking about him later, and it's going to be Delogny. So sorry. I have committed in my brain.
Robin Delongay.
What happens when we split up the story? We're all going to pronounce it differently.
Okay, well, Robin Delaunay. He ended up in New Orleans and married a Marie Drew, and they had 4 children. His daughter, Marie Claude Celeste Eleanor Robin Delaunay.
Claude.
Oh my gosh, what is happening?
Delogny.
Did you say Robabla?
Marie Claude.
Marie Claude Celeste
Eleanor Robin Delaunay.
Robin de Logane.
Thank you. I
was pronouncing it Robin. That is the American way. It's Robin.
What did you say?
It's Robin.
Oh, wow.
I had to listen to it.
Robin Delogny. That's what it is.
They're in New Orleans. I'm saying it with my southern accent.
Robin
Is
Delogny.
it Jean Baptiste?
Jean Baptiste. Okay.
Jean Baptiste. June Baptist.
Robin Delaunay. Sounds very French.
Goes by Rob. Oh, it's going to be great. I can't wait for my section.
I'm so glad I got to start. I actually had to listen to somebody pronounce it because I did not know.
That would have been a good idea.
I should have done that.
Nice job.
I do normally do that before my episodes, and then I type out how to pronounce them so I don't sound like an idiot. But
I was just going to commit.
Okay.
All right. So his daughter, Rob.
Her
her name is Marie. Okay. Marie Delaunay.
Marie, yes. Marie is
Claude.
also a very popular name back then.
It very much is.
Everyone is Marie.
Well, anyways, she married Jean-Noel Destrehan. Okay. Are you there?
Yes.
The 2
Destrehan.
families
I
had
can do
kids.
that.
1 kid from each family married each other. All right.
They became
eventually
the Destrahans.
Got it. So now the history of the house. Robin Delaunay contracted with another man named Charles Paquet to build his new home, which is now known as the Destrehan Plantation. And this was in 1787. So Charles has an interesting story. He was born an enslaved man, and his birth year is unknown. His father passed away shortly after he was born, and they didn't mention anything about his mother. Charles was eventually able to buy his freedom, but only after contracting to work with Robin Delaunay. Charles is listed on the paperwork as a free man. However, he was still enslaved when he entered into this contract. So Charles was basically the one in charge. He also worked with 6 other enslaved people who helped build this plantation. When you're walking around, and just to give a nod to Charles' architecture, you can tell how well built it is. Mm-hmm. The bricks are all handmade. The arches were made from cypress, and it's just exceptional craftsmanship. So when the Spanish came in 1760, they brought a law called Cortosión. Nope. They brought a law. And it is basically where a slave could buy their freedom, but only after petitioning the court and getting the approval from their owner. So an appraiser would then come in and tell that person how much they were worth. And if the enslaved person then agreed / had enough money, then they could buy their own freedom. That's basically how he bought his freedom.
Can you imagine having to go to a court and say how much you are worth?
No.
Like, that is just so inhumane to me to be like, yes,
Very
I am
much
worth
so.
this much.
Yeah.
I want to buy my freedom.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
So you can still actually see this building contract, and we saw it in that first room where we were. It's framed inside of the plantation. Construction for the house began in 1787, and it was completed in 1790. It is the oldest documented house in the lower Mississippi River Valley. So Robin Delaunay passed away in December of 1792, and the plantation was purchased at an auction by his son-in-law, Jean-Noel Destrehan. The purchase included 59 enslaved workers on the plantation that was growing and processing indigo at that time. He and his wife ended up having 14 children, which required an addition of 2 semi-detached wings to the house. In the 1790s, indigo wasn't really the vibe anymore, so they moved on to sugarcane after his brother perfected the granulation of sugar to make it a profitable share crop.
Thank goodness for sugar.
Truly. The plantation became the leading producer of sugar in St. Charles Parish in 1803. So 1803, Louisiana was now owned by France, and the French ambassador chose Jean-Noel Destrehan as first deputy, and his brother was chosen as the mayor of New Orleans. He, meaning Jean-Noel, served in the state legislature and ran for governor, but he lost. He also ran for the U.S. Senate seat, and he won, and he served there until 1817.
The Destrehan Plantation website has a page dedicated to the history of enslavement in St. Charles Parish, and I'm just going to kind of summarize what they had to say. So the first Africans were brought to Louisiana by the French crown, who wanted to increase the population to keep the new colony from failing. So the largest percentage arriving between 1720 and 1740. Many of them were from the area between Gambia and Senegal rivers in North Africa, coming from 2 major tribes that were skilled in agriculture and manufacturing dyes and cloth. But there are also many doctors, nurses, carpenters, potters, leather workers, and builders. Once the captives arrived at the mouth of the Mississippi River, which is kind of a weird thing to say. I mean, I get it, but anyway, they were informed that they would now be enslaved colonists. So, if possible, they broke up into groups and built their own shelters with dirt floors, and their treatment generally depended on who, and this is in quotes, who owned them. French and German families had fewer enslaved people and were more likely to free them. Plantations with larger numbers of enslaved people would rarely free anyone, and even more, the larger plantations were more likely to give out harsh punishments. And so enter the Code Noir. It's a decree from the King of France, and it was kind of a code of conduct for slavery in the French colonies. It restricted the activities of free people of color, mandated the conversion to Catholicism for all enslaved people, and defined punishments. It supposedly outlawed mutilation and the worst punishments that enslavers could inflict on their enslaved, but it still included things like lashings, branding, cutting off ears, cutting hamstrings, and execution.
Hamstrings.
Oh,
It's called hamstringing.
well,
You cut the hamstrings so they can't run away.
that's awful.
I hate that there's a word for that.
It's abhorrent, yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible. So, it defined punishments. I mean, I know there's lots of things that happen, but it's just terrible. So,
Beyond cruel.
even so, the Code Noir required enslavers to provide food and clothing and prohibited breaking up families. It said that the enslaved were forbidden to work on Sundays and religious holidays, and they weren't able to own or carry offensive weapons. I assume like knives, guns.
The right to bear arms did not apply to them.
No.
It also discouraged marriages by forbidding the separation of husband and wife. So they know they couldn't separate them, so the enslavers really were not keen on letting them get married.
Got it.
Yeah.
In the mid-1760s, there was a switch from French rule to Spanish rule, and during this time, many, many, many more people were brought to the area and were enslaved. The first owner of the Destrehan Plantation, Robin Delagney, sorry, I can't help it. He acquired the 10 enslaved people that had been living on the land he purchased. So just by purchasing the land, he also got the people. Early 1800s brought another transfer of power when Louisiana was sold to the United States, and the Code Noir was adjusted to American rule, bringing even more restrictions. Destrehan adopted the Creole system of management, which meant that the enslaved workers worked from sunrise to 3 p.m. except for harvest time when they needed to work more hours. They were divided into work groups based off of strength and ability. The prime group were the strongest and most intelligent men on the plantation. Other groups consisted of both men and women who completed various tasks, and children over 10 were in charge of picking peas, gathering corn, raking hay, or performing other small tasks under the direct supervision of 2 to 3 elderly people. And overall, records show that over 200 enslaved people, it says wrestled on the plantation, but that is not right. What would that say?
Resided?
I truly have no idea.
Okay. Records show that over 200 enslaved people were on the plantation before it was seized by the Union during the Civil War.
All right. In 1804, the enslaved people of Haiti overthrew the French rule and ended slavery in Haiti. French planters left the island and fled to New Orleans, bringing with them their personal slaves. And these slaves began spreading the news in New Orleans of a successful revolt by the enslaved people against their masters, which, they were free now, they could govern themselves, and that is dangerous stuff to spread in the U.S. at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So on January 8th, 1811, a slave revolt led by Charles Deslandes.
Sounds good to me.
He swept across the plantation. It started at the plantation of Manuel Andre in St. John the Baptist Parish. Slaves attacked Andre, wounding him and seizing any weapons that they could find. They then marched downriver and recruited additional slaves as they marched. Word soon began to spread along the plantations, and residents began to flee to Destrehan Plantation for safety. On January 10th, so 2 days later, troops were dispatched to Fortier Plantation. On January 10th, so 2 days later, troops were dispatched to Fortier Plantation, which is now Jefferson Parish, and they intercepted the revolt under the command of General Wade Hampton. The rebels split into 3 groups. Some went north toward the lake, others went upriver with Charles, and the last group went downriver. The downriver group was soon stopped at Ormond Plantation, and the upriver group was stopped in Kenner at the Henderson Plantation. At around 4 a.m. on January 12th, Charles was captured in the swamps behind the Picou and the Trouard plantations. He was killed in a very brutal manner. It does not go into details, which I don't think we need to know. But they said in a very brutal manner by men led by his owner and by Picou. And Judge Pierre Bouchat Saint Martin appointed Jean Noel, one of the 3 tribunals at that time after that. So last we left off, Jean Noel was the head of the plantation. Ownership changed when he died in 1823. 2 years later, his son-in-law, Stephen Henderson, bought the plantation from the estate. And Henderson was an immigrant from Scotland who had become a wealthy entrepreneur when he came to the U.S. In 1816, he married Marie Eleanor Destrehan, who was 16 at the time of their marriage when he was 42. Destrehan was her childhood home, so she had grown up there, and she went by Zelia.
Cute.
I don't know where she got that from, Marie Eleanor.
Well,
but that is her nickname.
So like Lindsey said, Jean Destrehan passed away October 1823. He left the estate to his children, all of them, Nicholas, Renee, Eleanor, or Zelia, Louise Odile, but I'm going to call her Louise, and Celeste. So Zelia and her husband, Henderson.
Stephen.
Mr. Henderson. They divided ownership with her brother, Renee. So Henderson operated the plantation while still living in New Orleans. And in 1830, Zelia attended her sister Louise's wedding in August, but then she traveled to New York in September and she died of an unexplained illness.
Aw.
So then Henderson brought her body back for burial. Renee went on to live at the plantation until his death 6 years later. So we're dropping Destrehan's. He left his half of the plantation to his remaining sisters, Louise and Celeste, and they promptly sold their part to Henderson, who was the sole owner until he died just 1 year later. The house sat empty until Louise's husband, Pierre, bought it 3 years later. They renovated the house to match the Greek Revival style, and Pierre became a member of the Louisiana Supreme Court in 1845, but still managed to make the Destrehan Plantation one of the largest producers of sugar in St. Charles Parish, like they said. This was until the Civil War began in 1861, which ended his profitable sugar production. So then he took the remaining family to France. But before he left, Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, asked him to present the Southern cause to the leaders of France. And because of this, the U.S. government confiscated all of Pierre's property when the war ended in 1865 because they basically said he was, not an American, a U.S. sympathizer. But then he received a pardon a few months later and got everything back. So as a reminder, 1865 is the year that slavery was formally abolished. And in a beautiful turn of events, over 700 freed slaves were housed at the Destrehan Plantation in not only the enslaved quarters and temporary housing, but they also got to stay in the main house. This was temporary, and Pierre was officially able to return to the plantation 2 years later in 1867. but he died in 1868, and his son, Emil, purchased the plantation. Emil studied law at Harvard and became a district judge in 1886. He never married, and he ended up selling the house in 1910. By 1914, the property was bought by the Mexican Petroleum Company, who would go on to become the American Oil Company. They tore down most of the buildings around the house and built employee housing. The main house was still there. The site was abandoned in 1959, and the Destrehan Plantation was left vacant and had been vandalized several times, partly due to an old legend that claimed that Jean Lafitte had buried treasure in the house. We never talked about him.
No.
Yes, we went to his bar.
I mentioned him in the vlog.
Mm-hmm.
He is an infamous pirate.
He is a pirate.
Mm-hmm.
It is in the bar that, you know...
The absinthe. Well, there is a Jean Lafitte's bar.
Lafitte's bar. It's one of the... I know
That's Everclear.
That's Everclear.
And then there was Pirate's Alley.
Absinthe.
Mm-hmm.
Where the absinthe was.
So the Lafitte's bar is one of the oldest buildings in New Orleans, one of the 3 buildings that did not get burned down. And we went there, and you guys had a drink at like 10 a.m.
That sounded judgy. We were on vacation.
Judging. I drank it too.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I had to caffeinate first. I was still drinking coffee. Espresso still.
We were just enjoying the time.
No, I love it. So yes, so he is famous in New Orleans too. He's a pirate. He's the Jack Sparrow of New Orleans.
Yarg.
And there were stories that he buried treasure in the Destrehan house.
Yes.
The house was donated to the nonprofit River Road Historical Society along with 4 acres in 1971. They later acquired an additional 12.8 acres. Volunteer efforts raised enough funds to restore the house, and they were recently able to work on authentically recreating the plantation community that would have surrounded the main house. Fun fact, the Destrehan Plantation it's been featured in shows and films, including Interview with the Vampire and, fascinatingly, but very cool, portions of Beyonce's Lemonade were also filmed there.
Who knew? Why was that not mentioned on our tour?
Right.
That seems important.
Does it feel like everywhere we went, they were like, Interview with the Vampire was filmed here?
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
I'd rather heard about Beyonce's Lemonade.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're open for tours, both history and ghost tours, and I'll bet you never guess which one we did.
We did the ghost tour.
The haunted
at night.
Tour.
Surprise.
One fun thing about Henderson's will, it was very controversial at the time because his will stipulated that all of his slaves be freed.
Mm.
And this was in 1838, so before the Civil War had even started.
But only after he died.
Yes.
Got it.
And it said that if they wanted to, they would be given transport to Liberia, if that's where they wanted to go. And the ones who chose to stay in New Orleans, a factory was to be set up for them to manufacture shoes and clothes.
Okay.
But of course, his family contested this and said no. And it spent 12 years in litigation before it was appealed to the Louisiana Supreme Court and set aside on a technicality.
Of course.
So he tried. He tried to say that, hey, when I die, all my slaves are free. And his family did not like that.
Mm. Still feels like it wasn't quite enough, but...
No, and, you know, you talked about Pierre, who was on the Supreme Court for Louisiana, that basically this case got appealed to. So it just makes me wonder, something shady.
Just draw a clear line in the sand.
Conflict of interest, it seems to me, but whatever.
Sure.
So we went there. We went on the tour. We got to see the whole house. It was beautiful. Got to go see some of the grounds as well. And they have, I forget what the building used to be used for, but now it is basically just like a tribute to the slaves that used to live there. Has all of their names written all over the walls.
It's called the 1811 Slave Revolt Exhibit.
Yes. So you can see all of the people who lived there during the times. And then you can also just read stories about them. And it's a really cool tribute.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that there are several buildings besides the main house. I think it was interesting that the way they set it up to kind of give you at least a small visual about what things might have been like. So just to give you an example, they have the outdoor kitchen set up, which would have been really close to the main house. There's a washroom, there's a schoolhouse, and now they have like a performance stage because it's set up as like an event space too out there. But in the interview that I was listening to, the woman said that, you know, back in the day when this was up and functioning as a plantation, there would have been at least 20, like she called them slave quarters. And these would have been at least a quarter mile down the road or more. And the houses were very small cabins, one-room cabins, all facing each other on one road. And there would have been around 8 to 10 people per cabin usually, and not always family. So just very interesting. The other thing that I had forgotten, but she mentioned too, is that the mattresses were stuffed with those Spanish moss, which is everywhere down there.
I was obsessed with the Spanish moss. It's these beautiful old oak trees with Spanish moss just hanging from them. Apparently it's its own organism. It grows on things, but it doesn't have to have the tree to grow. Like it's its own organism.
Mm-hmm. We took lots of pictures of the trees.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly why they said they stopped using the Spanish moss.
Bugs.
Oh, yeah, that's why.
They didn't want bugs in their hair.
Well, I don't blame them. So as far as like paranormal activity goes down there, I don't know how many like true investigations that they're doing. They may be doing a lot. It's a little tricky to find like descriptions of what's going on.
Yeah.
However, I did find a few in case you're interested.
Yes.
So Stephen Henderson's ghost is the one that is cited most often.
Yes. I remember her
He's
talking
probably
about
mad
Stephen.
people didn't carry out his will.
Yeah.
Well,
he's like 12 years in litigation for a technicality.
That's so frustrating.
That's the worst. That's why you need an advance directive nowadays.
They believe that he has been seen as the figure of a man wearing white, and he's been seen walking down the driveway, staring out the windows, and sitting in a chair.
Aw. He's just enjoying his house.
Well, yeah. So others say that they've seen the apparition of Jean Lafitte, strolling the grounds, maybe looking for his buried treasure.
I would like to see Jean Lafitte.
He doesn't remember where he buried it?
He can't remember.
His map did not go with him to the afterlife.
Oh, man.
He was too drunk on absinthe.
And he didn't draw an X.
So a psychic visited the home, and they described seeing a man with dark hair and a sharp nose, wearing a green coat and missing his right hand. And this description fit that of Nicholas Destrehan. And several others claim to have seen him as well. I don't remember learning too much about Nicholas.
Why he's missing a hand?
He must be missing a hand. I don't know why. There's also been spottings of a young girl with blonde hair, as she is seen frolicking and playing. Now, the other thing I remember, but nobody really mentioned it. Do you remember them talking about one of the daughters named Lydia that died of yellow fever in the room?
Yes. And Lydia's ghost has been seen around the plantation. Yes.
So not crazy. Lydia's ghost is somewhere there.
I only remember that because I took a selfie with the doll that was supposed to look like Lydia, or the mannequin that looked like Lydia.
And you took a picture by the chair, pretending to squat on the chair.
Yep.
Yes. Because you're not supposed to sit
wonderful.
on the chair.
Okay, yeah. That's all coming back now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we went there.
We did. It was nice to see just a tiny piece of that part of history and how they've preserved it. And I really appreciated the dedication.
Yeah, I thought they were very tactful in the way that they spoke about the history.
Yeah.
Let's just vote on the New Orleans in general. Would we go back to investigate?
I guess it depends on what it was. I mean, I could go back if it was for an investigation or if it was for like a specific event. I don't think I need to go back for just a vacation, but I would go back for other things.
Okay, I would agree with that.
I'd go back to investigate someplace because I think there's probably are places that maybe we just
we couldn't figure them out.
Couldn't find them.
Yeah.
But yes, for a vacation, I think it's a cool place to go and do once. I don't know if I need to go back.
Right.
We didn't really mention the Garden District, and I know you kind of brought it up once, but that place was really cool. And some of those houses have to be haunted.
Oh, for sure.
So if they were like, hey, you can come stay in the Garden District, and also this place is haunted, I'd be like, okay, I can do that.
If I have to.
Yes.
Twist my arm.
Right.
The Garden District is like a bunch of older homes, but they are like ginormous, beautiful, rich.
Yes.
A lot of famous people live there. And so I'm sure a lot of those houses are haunted because they're old as well.
Yeah. You know what? I forgot to mention that also was one of my favorite things.
I'm so glad that we were able to rally for it.
Yeah.
I knew you would.
I quite enjoyed that.
We got to see John Goodman's dogs.
They're adorable.
There was 2 of them?
Yes. The most beautiful golden retrievers. I love them.
Mm-hmm.
They are so over people. You
They
can
are.
just tell.
They could not care less.
Yes.
You could tell like the homes that are owned by famous people because they are like they have shrubs. They have something to like block their house where you can't see inside their house. No, John Goodman's house.
The door was open.
The door was open and his, like, there's a gate, obviously, but his dogs are just lounging on the front yard. We're like, are those his dogs?
And they just get up, look around, go back in. They just were unfazed.
But then I remember there was a group walking past us as we were like saying hi to the dogs, and they were like, who's John Goodman? And we're like,
how dare you?
What was that horror movie he was not just in?
It
but
was like the Cloverfield, the second one.
Cloverfield. Okay, yeah.
So yes, that was fun. That was probably the only thing I think we did outside of the French Quarter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you have any suggestions for our next spooky trip, let us know.
If you want to fund a hotel outside of the French Quarter, let us know.
We also need a couple years to plan this, so you got time.
We have to think ahead.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in this week to our haunted kind of investigation.
Yeah.
In Tripstigation.
The entire French Quarter.
In Tripstigation to New Orleans.
Nailed it.
You can always find us at thetipsyghost.com with our socials linked from there, or send us an email at thetipsyghost@gmail.com.
Please give us a 5-star rating and a great review anywhere you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate it, and it really does help.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.